The Republic of Cuba is today one of the longest dictatorships in the entire Western Hemisphere. Since 1959, with the triumph of the Cuban Revolution, Latin America saw the birth of the first socialist state in its territory, and to this day, with all its difficulties, socialist Cuba still stands. However, the entire period that corresponds to Cuba before the revolution is generally omitted, little studied and consequently little known. Many supporters of the current Cuban government assure that pre-revolutionary Cuba was a horrible nation and it brought a dark age to the island. But on the contrary, many detractors of the Cuban socialist government assure that pre-revolutionary Cuba was actually a good nation. But which of the two sides has biggest reason? To determine what the quality of life was like in Cuba before Fidel Castro's revolution, we have to review the data of the time. According to the United Nations yearbooks of the late 1950s, Cuba was the third country in Latin America with more doctors in relation to its population. It even had more doctors per capita than great powers of the time, such as America or Britain. It had infant mortality rates similar to the levels of countries such as Germany, Japan, Belgium, or Canada. It had one of the highest literacy rates in Latin America, only behind countries such as Argentina, Chile, or Uruguay. Had the second largest number of cars in relation to its population in Latin America, only behind Venezuela. It had the largest number of televisions in relation to its population in Latin America, and the Cubans were the third Latin American people with the best nutrition, only behind Argentina and Uruguay. According to Norton Ginsburg's Atlas of Economic Development, Cuba ranked 22 in socioeconomic development out of 122 nations that were surveyed, being the third most developed country in Latin America. However, if in theory Cuba was a relatively well-developed country for its time, why did the Cuban Revolution occur in the first place? To determine this, it is necessary to research into the political and historical reality of Cuba before Fidel Castro. After its independence in 1902, Cuba was a country that suffered from a lot of political instability. Frequently in the country there were military coups, revolutions, dictatorships and tyrannical governments that damaged the country's institutions, causing Cuba to suffer a lot from embezzlement, corruption and an economic inequality within the Cuban territory. In addition to all of this, America very frequently intervened in the internal affairs of Cuba, forcing the Cuban government to sign unequal treaties, and invading the island on several occasions in order to defend its interests. This gave the Cuban government fame of being an American puppet. Finally, and in addition to everything mentioned, it is remarkable the fact that Fidel Castro, when he carried out his revolution in 1959, at that time he did not mention that he was a communist, or that he had planned to establish a socialist dictatorship in the country. In fact, many bourgeois and Cuban businessmen supported his revolution. His transition to communist took place from the 60s, already being in power. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Remember that you can leave your opinion in the comments and tell me if you want a video about a particular topic.